Hi, I'm Captain Alec Robbie. I've been a sport fishing guide and captain for over 15 years. I've taken people fishing from the waters of Point Conception, California, to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and everywhere in between. During that time, it has taught me the importance of preserving the wild places we enjoy for years to come. Join me as we discuss techniques, conservation, and engaging our community to keep our world wild and to keep our outdoor pastime strong for generations. This is Keep It Wild with Alec Robbie. Well, hello, everyone. Today we're joined by Captain Wes Pierson. I've known Wes for, I don't even want to count the years, but a long time here in my grand scheme of things. He's been a charter captain, sport fishing guide, kind of more the small boat situation in the Southern California region, specializing in white sea bass, bluefin tuna, yellowtail, kind of anything within reach of a charter boat, and worked with him pretty extensively here. So yeah, in the sector. So how's it going, Wes?
Oh, yeah. Hey, thanks, Alex, for having me on. Good to be here.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I know your story plenty well, but let's which the story is kind of unique. You got a lot of people start into like being a captain or a guide or whatever you want to call it game by just kind of starting when they're really young and kind of growing into it, kind of being the only thing that they know. But you kind of did it a little differently. So like you came in from a different career, or let's just hear about it from the beginning. You love to fish, and then adulthood came. How'd that all go? What's
Yeah,
Wes's story?
probably like most people, grew up fishing, sneaking into golf courses. And even before that, my dad, would have us out going to Mammoth every year, or bass fishing, stuff like that. So it was always something I did all through childhood and high school and college. But it wasn't ever something I really thought of as what I wanted to do as a career. Um, and then after college, I worked in several different variations of sales, and it just wasn't really for me. It wasn't as fulfilling as I wanted it to be. So yeah, I just kind of had like a epiphany moment one day going to work and just said, this is going to be my last day. And after that, made a few phone calls and went down to the docks there in San Diego and got a job as a deckhand on a sport boat at 31 or 32, whatever it was. From there, I worked on the Success. It's a smaller charter boat down there in San Diego. I did a full season on there, which was probably the best thing that could have happened to me working for Kerry. He's a really good fisherman and a hardworking, no nonsense guy. But we also, not only did we do our San Diego, 4 months of the summer season in San Diego, which in 2014 was some of the best fishing we'd had in several years as far as offshore fishing. So I got to see, kelp fishing, anchor fishing, bluefin fishing, yellowfin fishing, and bigger fish to us at the time. We're catching fish from like 70 to 90 pounds, which was a big fish back then. And then from there, we went down to Mag Bay. We spent a month in Mag. And from there, we went down to Puerto Vallarta and spent 4 or 5 months down there. So I really got to see, what big fish fishing was all about and how to properly use a kite for the big tuna. And, it was a great experience, and I had a ton of fun and catching these yellowfin that I never thought that I would see personally. And come to find out a few years later, we'll be catching bluefin that same size in a small boat right in our backyard. So kind of all worked out, without me knowing perfectly there. From there, I did one full season on there and just kind of decided that living on the boat and doing the whole Mexico season wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life or even for another few years. So I came home back to Orange County and got a job on the local 3/4 day boat. And that was also a good learning experience, and the fact that I knew that that's kind of wasn't for me as well. Catching, small calico bass and small rockfish and sculpin and stuff like that. But it was good as far as like managing large groups of people that maybe don't fish, and showing them, especially the kids, showing them how to tie knots, untangle, all that kind of stuff. And from there, I had gathered enough sea time. It was like 4 years or so to apply for my credential, my 100-ton license. And once soon as I got that, I got hired on to run a 4-pack charter boat, and I did that for the past 7 or 8 years. And most of
Yes.
that was like targeting whatever the biggest fish around was, whether that be halibut, yellowtail, white sea bass, bluefin tuna, and in the last few years, swordfish was thrown in the mix as well.
Literally anything in striking distance. And
Yeah,
what one thing, so when Wes went, that is where I actually got to personally, that's where I met Wes, was his transition into that, which was kind of cool to be along for that ride. I can't say I was involved too much, but definitely there in the preliminary, and then sporadically as I kind of helped out over the years. So we've definitely kind of grown in some ways in that regard, which,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
which is all good. It's kind of, so this is, I don't say a main difference, but I literally jumped into sport fishing like a guide as a career as soon as I could, and just that's kind of all I know, which is kind of bizarre. Like I don't really know much corporate stuff, much like other avenues. So to hear the opposite coming from, it's not the opposite, but a little more formal, and then working your way in, kind of call it 10 years after, maybe a little more in 10 years after in life. I think I started doing all that nonsense when I was like 15, and you came in at 31. It's pretty impressive to jump into that. The young man. It's kind of it's a young man's game. It's quite the grind to like cut your teeth, and march your way up. Uh, but fishing on the success, that's I'm gonna I'm gonna talk about this in other episodes, guys. But there's such a special fishery in San Diego, and I like to talk about it. It's like a San Diego-based long-range fishing, which is the boats leave out of San Diego, and they could fish close. They could fish, far, 1,000 miles and everything in between. And the boat he was on, the Success, basically did that on a little, I don't say smaller of a scale, but it's a smaller boat. But for being one of the first boats to work on, I don't think there could be a better way to just get introduced to, like you said, everything. Like usually it's a half day, but like a 5 hours fishing for calicos, sand bass, sculpin, whatever, or like just local or tuna or whatever. Even a long range boat, you don't get that well rounded. That's pretty interesting. So like, I know you brushed over it, but like the amount of places you went, be it out of Point Loma, San Diego, and you said like, where else did you go? You said like, did you go like Mag Bay and Puerto Vallarta? And
Yeah, and
tell
then we
us a little more about that.
we took the boat up from we took the boat up from PV up into La Paz too, and did some boat work in La Paz that year, and also ran some trips up there. So that was super cool. We did like a 8-day dive trip with the skiff, and just got to like travel and check out all those cool islands on the map that you always say like, oh, I wish I could go spend some time there, but we just went and put the anchor down and got to explore all those places. That was pretty awesome too.
See that's kind of what it's about. Like one of the downsides of being a guide or a captain or whatever you want to call it, doing it as a profession, is it's a blessing and a curse. it's the I don't call it monotony quite yet, but it's the routine. Like you get set in such a routine, going to similar places, and it's like you get good at it, which is the good part about it. But also, there's like a little like a little adventure spirit in you that's like you just said, like what's up there? Like why don't I ever get to go up there? So for jumping on the success, like me looking back on the years of my sport fishing career, I've ventured off into newer places at times and whatever, but there's just something about straight up like you're saying, just hey, what about over there? That seems kind of cool. Just go mess around, see what's there. I don't know what's here. I'm gonna put the anchor down. Conditions look right. Jump in the water, put a bait down. That's the little bit of mystery still. So you got that right away. So that sounds awesome to get on that back then. I want to get on that now. I want to go to those places I don't no idea what they're about. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, that was a pretty cool experience, just like the fishing aspect of it. And to me, it was all new, right? I'd never been to any of those places, so there was that part of it, the excitement, you know, to pulling into San Carlos in the middle of the night and tying up the boat next to these old steel rusty shrimp boats and crazy guys coming out and yelling at you in Spanish and uh, and just I remember one of the days Carrie, the captain, was like, "Oh, we're gonna go to the roosterfish beach." He put the anchor down, and we caught a freaking roosterfish. And as we were pulling out, he's like, "I've never fished there before." It's just like, what the.
just just that's a nice no bearing. Just like might as well. It looks like what
Yeah,
the pictures have.
yeah, exactly. So, that
Uh,
part was cool, and obviously catching all the new species like grouper and wahoo, and seeing like a single frigate dip and get a full rack of yellowfin or um, just total new experience compared to what we, or at least what I've experienced up here fishing out of San Diego and Orange County.
right, and I mean, through your little synopsis there, you kind of said it, which was like, I knew I didn't want to do that. So it's like, it's cool to do, but when it comes to like thinking, there's a difference between doing something recreationally and then doing something with the forethought of like, years and years and building a life on it and all the factors that come in with life. Like, you know, if you want a family or a dog or I don't know, sleeping in your own bed, just a myriad of like things like, it's cool to like live on a boat and just be a little vagabond out there, but there's also other avenues. So like what were some of the motivating things that kind of steered you a little more, call it local per se, rather than like the longer range or whatever carries would you consider that?
I think if I was younger, I would have embraced that run with open arms, But being that the age that it was at the time, um, it wasn't as important to me as much as like having family and friends close by. And at the time, I still was looking forward to having a family, and I know myself well enough to know that if I follow down a path, I'm probably going to hard-headedly stick it out. Especially if I've made some commitments, I'm going to honor those. So um, I just knew that there was opportunity at home, and if I wanted to come back to that, I'm sure that I could have found something along those lines again. Um, but yeah, just seeing that life and even as fun as it was exploring, the towns of Puerto Vallarta and La Paz and stuff, there was a lot of downtime in between trips, and to me, like that was just kind of like I've done it. I don't want to do this every year. Like I don't want to work for a week and then have a week off where I'm spending all the money I just made, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was part of my motivation, and growing up fishing locally and with my dad, he had a private boat. Um, Really, what I wanted gain and like not say master, but have a better understanding of was fishing and being good locally. And so the only way to do that and to learn the intricacies of our local fishing is to do it, you know. You could take offshore fishing, somebody who's offshore fished their whole life, and they'd have a pretty good idea of what to do. But um, man, Catalina just will humble the best of us. And so the only way that I saw, as far as like the progression that I wanted and what I wanted to get out of it, was to get back home and get on a boat that does that.
Right. And there is I mean, basically from Santa Barbara, I mean, call it even Point Conception, like to San Diego, Mexican border. There, there's so much inshore, so much quality inshore fishing to be done. You know, not saying it's by no means easy, super technical, and that's what you have. you have you you know took that on head on when you decided to like work for Bite Sport Fishing back in the day, which it that's I forgot. Did you? So I know you said you started in like 2014, which you guys will, if you listen to this and listen to many people talk about their story, 2014 and 15 is like the breakout years for like closer, I won't say closer range fishing, but like, yeah, it's just like, within 70 miles, there's just an abundance of bluefin tuna, yellowfin, like tuna, pelagic fish. There's yellowtail and all sorts of the pelagic fish, but these inshore fish have kind of always been there. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending on how far back in the records you want to go with the dip in population of sea bass and the resurgence or whatever. But like, I guess long-winded. Were you here when we had a lot of the squid on the coast, or did you come in kind of after that?
I was here. I've never left.
Or I mean, were you working for Bite when that
No,
was happening? I know you
no,
were.
I kind of came in with Bite on the heels of that. It was more the kelp line mackerel fish at that time, but
Okay.
I was like, I had a skiff. I would work my sales job from 5 to whatever, whenever I got off, and I would tow the boat up to Oceanside and then go fish the squid nest all night and then go back to work the next day.
Hell yeah. Hell
So
yeah.
I wasn't I didn't know as nearly what I know now, but I was motivated and excited by that fishery and wanted to get a piece of it. And so yeah, we had our nights out there, but nothing on the to the scale of doing it professionally.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to plug you back in a few years or so to that. that that was some good sea bass fishing. It was just different, but you definitely came in at the time to really have a for the amazing pelagic style. But I guess and you're yeah kind of right when you started was you got like you said a little more familiar with like the Catalina and Clemente and just a little more local islands. So you had to you couldn't just drive I don't know 2 to 8 miles on the beach to a squid nest. You had to make a run. You had to a little more logistics. It was yeah, you came in during the a little bit more challenging and a little more technical of a time for sure. So I guess how's that? How's that? How'd you enjoy and do you enjoy? How do you like uh that sector of it now that you've done it for 7, 8 years, what you said?
Yeah, I think I'd have to look at my book, but 7 or 8 years now. Yeah, running. And it's funny when I first got the job, there was very little like hand holding. It was just kind of like, here's the keys, here's what I would do. Good luck. So I did have some good mentorship, but a lot of it was just learned on the job and making mistakes. But that first season was I got pretty lucky. I we had that big fish right on the beach, and we had good conditions for a lot of the days. So I would say I fished the beach for the sea bass season like 75 or 80% of the time. Um,
Right.
and Catalina or Clemente would be like a hard fallback if the conditions were backwards or we didn't get a bite first thing in the morning there. We'd zip over to the island. But um, after that, after that first year, the local stuff kind of got less and less abundant, and so I spent more and more time over at Catalina and learning there. I mean, I still scratch my head a ton fishing over there, but learning that island has been like one of the things that I'm most like personally proud of. Um, to be able to that island's just so hit and miss and finicky, and you could be in the right place at the right time but the fish aren't there, and vice versa. You could watch some guy right next to you that's doing everything backwards catch them. So it's to be able to go over there and catch fish and like have confidence that you're gonna have some opportunity every trip is to me was is a big feather in my hat, like coming from just taking my dad's boat over there on a Friday night and coming home on Sunday afternoon and like literally catching a couple calico bass. So this is like
Mhm.
where I'm at now. It's I've come a long way, and I think a lot of the setups and conditions reading and stuff like that you learn on the coast maybe don't um, apply as well over at the island, but the island stuff kind of applies anywhere you go. So if you can master one of our local islands, I think you could take that knowledge and apply it to any other coastline, whether it be an island or the beach, and have success.
I have to agree with you in regards to if you can fish Catalina good. I don't know. You probably have a good grasp on inshore fishing. But like just for a couple examples, like you were saying, condition on the beach different than the island. That what would be a if you were to pick kind of a tangible difference? I know that there's a ton, but like you know, what would be one that's beach that don't work at the island, and vice versa. If you were to
Well,
kind of
coast
pick
is
something.
the coast, at least in our zone here, the kind of call it like Newport to La Jolla, really likes the current going one direction.
Yeah.
And if it's not going that direction, you might as well pack up and go home. Uh, it'll bite a little bit in no condition, but if it's not going the right way, if it's going backwards, I don't know that I've caught a fish there in backwards conditions when I knew they were there. Like I caught them the three trips in a row prior in good conditions.
Mhm.
And when the conditions are bad, you don't even get a bite, or maybe you catch a shark or a black sea bass or something like that. So the coast is pretty easy to read. If you pull out of the harbor and the current's hitting the buoy the wrong direction, you might as well just keep on just keep on going, because it's
Right. Wow.
Eric,
Yeah.
it's pretty straight. Whereas at Catalina, you could have current going uphill at one kelp line, and you could drive a quarter of a mile, and the current could be ripping downhill at the next one, and it's never the same uh, from east to west. So the only way to know at that island is to go look at all of it, or you know what I mean, or kind of like sense that things are turning here, so I need to get over there where it bites better in this current or that condition. Um, and that's the biggest factor with the coast when the and, and sometimes you'll get in a like a 2 week cycle where the conditions are perfect every day and you don't even have to worry about it. But that one day that it turns around, if you don't have a backup plan, you're in big trouble. Whereas at Catalina, if you go to your spot that you had in mind when you left the dock and the conditions are backwards, usually you can drive around and find something where that current and that conditions are going to work within a few miles.
Right. I don't think I've ever really thought of the coast like that. My mindset with like everywhere. Granted, because of I feel like a lot of my driving boat background has either been at an island like that or you know down the coast of Baja or whatever, where your spots are so far in between that uphill one way, downhill the other, just I guess my default's like you just gotta go and look, or like if someone's driving by, you just be like, yo, are you making good speed, bad speed? Like, what does it look like? What are the lobster to where like I didn't realize I guess how predictable the beach was like that, I mean, I've most of my experience on the beach has been just like you go there and it's a lot of times it's just a lot of my experience just been like slack or something starting to happen, or I don't know, I haven't really had to think too critically in that local regard, I guess, or I guess Brandon, when I was with him, he just played it off very well, or whatever, but I never really had to build too much off. I never really saw the writing on the wall. I guess I was always just like, oh, it looks crap. It likes it downhill. Like, go to the next, up, down again, like down again, or whatever, and just keep bouncing around all night until the sun comes up, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're out of time. But oh, that's
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's certain times when you can catch it when it turns around or stuff like that, or if you've kind of sold out to the coast, you can kind of grind it out and try to make it work. But if it was me and you going fishing and the current was backwards on the beach, I'd be like, all
turn
right,
around.
maybe check a
Hell
couple spots and like we're out of here. We're gonna go over to the island or something like that. But that
yeah.
it also plays totally different when you're talking about a squid nest versus a kelp line.
Oh, for sure.
If
Yeah.
you're off the coast and it's just out in the sand or the mud or whatever, and there's squid there, the current could be going kind of any which way. The fish are gonna want to eat it. They're gonna come find it. But
Yeah.
if you're fishing a piece of structure, whether it's a reef or a kelp line, typically even anywhere you go, they bite best with a certain current direction.
Right.
And
Yeah.
even if there's a big school there that's there, and the divers are shooting them, and you caught them last week there, but if the current's going the wrong way, it just for whatever reason you just it won't allow you to force it. It just they don't like it that way.
Yeah. They love to make you look like a fool like that. That's for damn.
They,
That's for damn sure. It's kind of going. You brought up how you started rolling on the skiff charters, where it was like just kind of getting thrown in the fire, and everyone always wants it now. Rather, they want it even sooner than now. They want it so fast. People, they'll text or ask like, "Hey, where's is there sea bass here? Did this has the island by?" And they're asking all these questions, and the 90% of the answer is just gotta go fucking. Oh god, I gotta edit that out. You just gotta go look. You gotta go try, just like we do, or whoever. You just gotta go and try and grind it, and then it'll fill in the gaps by itself. But like, very. I mean, sometimes it happens where you just stumble right into it. But there's some people who, they come out charters or they have their own boats or whatever, and they're like, oh, I want to get good at fishing this, and I'm like, I can only like explain, you can only explain it so much before you just gotta sit there in your boat, stare at a plotter, stare at the way your baits are going, how you're whatever, and then like, oh, this ain't working, and then somehow your boat lurches kind of one way, your baits start going there, and then something happens. Like the just doing it is so transferable to all aspects of not only fishing but like, I don't know, hunting. Like we're both like, by no means am I a professional hunter, nor are you, but that's something that both fascinates us. And like, it's one thing I found out with elk hunting. There's just no substitute than just literally like getting in the fire, which is difficult because like with hunting, it's like 7 days if you're like, if you like commit a good grip of time, whereas fishing, you can go freaking months and months and months, So, yeah, definitely. If there's one thing for people to take away with growing their knowledge or experience level, I hate to say it, but you just got to go. When you try to ask me what days that would be at best, seasons, months, moon cycles, whatever, like you can definitely get statistics down. But dude, just pick a date and go that works for you. Because the more days you go, the more it'll just piece together. So that's you
Totally.
know,
And I still get I'm not very forthcoming with information, especially over at the island. But when people, if I just told you right where to go and you caught some fish, that's awesome, right? You had like a good trip, you got some fish, you get your pictures, but you really didn't learn anything from that.
nah.
And or if you're going to go back again next month, your only baseline is like to go to that same spot and do the exact same thing. And you know as well as I do that most times those fish are not in the same spot day to day, let alone month to month. And so, if you want to go out on your own boat and get good, it's like you have to ask, you can ask questions that are going to help you like interpret what you're looking for or what you're looking at. But if you just ask where someone caught them yesterday or last week, like most of the time it's not going to work out. You're probably not going to catch them again. But also, even if you did, like there's not really a hard takeaway from that for you. You have nothing to build on for next trip.
Oh, for sure. I mean, one of the classic things from a long range boat. I mean, this is very transferable to fishing sea bass, many places too. But it's like, oh, why don't we try Alejos Rocks? We killed it last time. All right. How many trips a year do you do? One. When did you do it? 365 days ago. Okay. Well, now the water's 65 degrees. There's no, the current has been going the wrong way. The boat was there yesterday. Like, it's a desert unless a miraculous occasion happens. But, like, it's just a default. Like, and there's a myriad of sea bass spots where that happens too. Oh, why don't we try there? Why don't we try there? I'm like, well, it's a fantastic idea. We should try there, but then we won't have time to try here, and then we're out of time, and then see you later. It's like this is the best. So it's exactly, and that's just
It's just part of the game, dude.
straight up, straight
Yeah.
up part of the game. Yeah. So, char- being a charter captain or charter captain guide, I know I kind of use those interchangeably. Um, People think it's all about catching fish, but like the people aspect and the like customer service. I remember you in the beginning of your intro here. You were mentioning, oh, I learned how to handle the crowds and handle the people and whatnot. And that in itself is that's a very unique skill. Like, at what point did you not did you, but how does the handling the different personalities, how do you handle that? How do you like it? Would you be better just being a commercial dude all alone on a boat, just turning in fish per pound, or do you kind of like the camaraderie? Like, what's your feeling on the customers?
When I first started doing this solo, I that I put an immense amount of pressure on myself, um, to perform, to produce fish for these people, for my customers, and for myself to kind of make a name for myself. And um, customer service wasn't always didn't always come uh, super easy to me, but it's something that I've worked on really hard, and it's one of the more enjoyable aspects of the fishing now. It's like seeing somebody that you fished with for a few years or a few trips in a row, and they've accomplished a goal all on their own that they've had, and you've kind of given them some pointers or helped them along, um, and seen them kind of grow as an angler, and then it all comes to fruition, and it's a pretty awesome experience for me and for them. Um, so that part I really enjoy. The grind of it is a lot of times, not not getting a full 8 hours of sleep every night, and changing conditions, and there's a lot of anticipation for everyone that comes out on fishing with me. So I definitely feel all that, and I want to provide them with the outcome that they're looking for. And so I kind of wear that on my shoulders sometimes, but uh, overall, to me, like, if you and me were to go fishing now, it's kind of changed. Like I probably wouldn't even try that hard. It's more about I get enjoyment out of seeing other people catch fish. Even like taking Lauren out last year with her family and watching her catch a big old bluefin. Like I don't need to reel in another fish ever probably, but watching
Especially
other
bluefin.
people experience something that I take for granted every day is a pretty awesome way to make a living.
Yeah, that's one thing that it's hard to describe. And but as far as guests or anglers or clients, whatever you want to call them, passengers, go, sometimes it can be frustrating just because some unrealistic requests and expectations and this and that, and just the volume. But like later, the further on I've gone in life, which it seems like it's kind of happened with you, is you're able to like associate with, like, bond with these like individuals and get close to them and understand their goals and what makes them tick, and realize the great joy you're bringing into this into them and this like society. Like if we take passengers out and just make it a bluefin catching game, you said it the best, is like, if Wes caught another 80-pound bluefin, it's like, all right, well, okay, all right. If if this, like, a kid comes out, or even any person that all they see is a person catching a tuna on their phone as they're scrolling, or on a YouTube channel, or back in the day it used to be Inside Sports, like on those VHS things, and you make this tremendous task, this overwhelming task, very doable, and then that accomplishment, well, just being out there and like getting them into the action, and then having it come to fruition, that's something that's hard to, for me personally, to let go, and that's like with the clients I take out, my friends, uh, and now it's like that I'm old enough. I have a daughter. She hasn't really caught much yet, but I see it in her eyes. I see it in these other little kids' eyes, where it's like, and I say it often, like, fishing and hunting, there's like a primal there's something primal about it, that it taps into something in everyone, I believe, is there, that they never knew they had, that whatever that dopamine release that's like programmed into you to like get excited and want more, which is like, once you get really good, it kind of could be a downfall, just, oh, just kill, kill, kill. But my going back to, like, you know the new people, it they just get these, they become a different person than they never knew they were. So it's, I don't know, if you in this time in my life, the volume of clients a little less, a little more personal, a little more attentive, and being able to bridge that gap between something that's a fish that's difficult to catch and making it doable, it's definitely something special about that. And
Yeah.
beyond the experience too, is like involving, I mean, there's so many people in this world, and such a small percentage that like fish and actually get to go to these places that you take them to. And each person, you get each new person, each kind of, yeah, just new person you're able to take out there, you're straight up sharing these wild places with them. And it just, especially like in the Southern California thing, we're like 60 miles away from LA, millions of people, and there's just acres of 130, 200-pound tuna. Like, this is National Geographic-esque, and we're like near a metropolitan area. So it's nice to be able to expose people to that, to the world out there and those fishing spots, and that way they actually give a they give a shit about it. And yeah, there's more people that like it, the more people that give a shit about it, the more it'll stay good, the more that my daughter and or my kids or your kid, whoever, will eventually have that in the further down the line. I know,
Totally.
man, I got really deep there, but I mean, it's something I feel very strongly about, and that's kind of one of the pillars of this podcast is um, engaging community and conservation. And the best way to conserve is just to want it to be there and keep it good. And the easiest way to like keep stuff good is have people care about it. So yeah, it's
I think you hit it on the head, and it's super important because every year it seems like they're trying to take and more from us as far as fishing goes. And um, you know, being a new hunter and like seeing all the advocacy groups there are for hunting and for wild places in America, there I think fishing could do better as a whole. And part of that is just like you said, like introducing new people to it. And when you have however many millions of people that live in Southern California, and 1% of them have ever been to Catalina Island just to go tool around and see
yeah,
Avalon, it's kind of crazy, And the more that people that are exposed to it and that enjoy it and want to see it for their kids or their grandkids, the better it'll be for all of us.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm not going to get too political here, but just kind of like a general, thing to be aware of. Like, I mean, we're in our own little bubble, our own little world here of fishermen and outdoorsmen and hunters and whatnot. And it's like sometimes it can get kind of weirdly divided, like, oh, offshore guys, inshore surfer, whatever, I don't care. But like, you got to think of like the big picture of like, by big picture, I mean population and their interest. So any sort of fishing is good awareness for that. And now you just got to make sure other people know about that to like keep these areas good or at least have access to it. Like you're saying, you're a new hunter. Like one of the biggest topics with hunters is access, like public land access, access to literal dirt and mountains and hills and whatever to walk around and shoot a bird or a deer or whatever, And we in Southern California, I think we take it for granted just how good we got it right now. Just the ability to literally go. I mean, now there's like MPAs, but there was a time when you could like fish everywhere, like
Anywhere.
anywhere. Like, oh, drop a boat, drop anchor here, catch. Like, I'll try, And there, some people are deciding, well, let's take this block away and take this block away, and whatever. It's like, it's you got to. That's coming from somewhere. So if if you let it, I don't want to say if you let it happen, it'll happen, but you just gotta be aware that there's people with other motivations in this world, and it's sometimes you gotta just, I'm not saying take a stand, but just be aware of what's happening. There's a vote somewhere that votes for something to get closed, or votes for a limit to get dropped, or to put an animal on an endangered species list, or put a season, make it shorter, longer, a size, weird thing. So, it's definitely nice just to grab your rod, grab a fishing license, and go fishing. But might not be a bad idea to just kind of be a little more involved. By involved, I just mean trying to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because
Awareness is,
unfortunately, a lot of times by the time people hear about it, it's like 5 years just solidified in the like happened. So yeah. Bottom line, you taking all those people, doing a great service to this society, this world nowadays. True hero you are.
oh, yeah.
I guess speaking of that, like in your time, what's been some big changes? Like, what's been some big like when I say environmental, I just kind of mainly mean like fish. Like, what have you seen change in the landscape? Even from when you were not even doing it professionally, but like back in your, you know, beginning skiff personal skiff days to right now. Like what are some things you've noticed that have changed pretty dramatically in like the fishing landscape, and are they just strictly environmental? Do you think like people have had an impact, be it like overfishing, size limit, bag limit? Like what have you noticed throughout your time?
Well, I mean, fr- from when I was growing up, it was, you could go out on a half day or 3/4 day boat, and you could catch your 10 calicos and your 10 sand bass, and maybe you got lucky, you got a halibut.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously they've restricted that down to 5. Um, and I think, you know, I'm all for regulation to keep fisheries viable, but that really takes a lot of people out of the game. Um, you
What do you
know,
mean, like who out of the game, you say?
for some people, spending $75 to go fishing to
Oh,
catch
like
5 is not really worth it anymore, when they could go out and catch enough fish to feed their whole family for a week, or have several meals out of that.
right.
Um, now you're going out and you catch 5 calico bass, or even 5 sand bass, and that's maybe one meal for a family. So that part is a bummer. One thing I have seen, get better, obviously, is the white sea bass. I remember growing up, if anyone caught a sea bass, it was a big deal, even if it was a short. And now, not just the people that target them, but you'll see, occasionally with 3/4 day boats along the coast from San Diego up to LA. It's not uncommon for them to randomly catch a 40 to 50 pound sea bass on the coast when they're fishing, uh, for halibut or for bass. So I think that's a good sign that those fish are coming back. And I know there's been a lot of work done with the hatcheries and stuff like that to augment the population, with small fish. And I think for the local angler, like, having our bass and our halibut. It'd be nice if our barracuda came back. Um, but those are kind of like the entry level trips for people that where I grew up fishing, and where I got the bug, and where I wanted to go catch something bigger, something
Yeah,
exotic,
definitely the
stuff like that.
bug, the bug
Uh,
catcher for sure. Like you're
you know,
saying, the
yeah,
sand bass and barracuda. Yeah,
and somebody would randomly catch a yellowtail or something like that when you're barracuda fishing, and it was like, oh man, I can't wait to go back. I want to catch one of those. And it's kind of funny with the influx of the El Nino that we had, um, in 2014-15. It brought in an insane amount of pelagic fish. Um, we had Baja style yellowtail fishing all up and down the coast for almost 2 years. We had some insane uh, kelp patty fishing a few years ago, where there was more Dorado than anyone's ever seen. And so a lot of new anglers, which I think is great that we're getting new anglers into the sport, but um, they they're going to have kind of a rude awakening when things get back to normal here, and the fishing isn't as good as they remember it when they first started. So I think it's good for people to start out when they're young, or when they're just getting into it, um, fishing rockfish or fishing bass, fishing on your local half and 3/4 day boats. Um, so that when you do go out and you want to expand and catch a bigger fish, whether it be a yellowtail or white sea bass or a tuna, um, there's a little more of appreciation there.
right. Yeah, it's definitely a fine balance between like you want to get people the best, quality of fish, but also like it's also nice for them to get pumped on 5 calicos or 5 sand bass or like a couple barracuda, just like that. That way, when the El Nino comes, it's not an expectation; it's appreciation. That's, I guess,
Totally.
it's that
I mean,
that's
I'm sure you can remember years where like if you know boats would go days without catching an albacore.
yeah, yeah. I remember. Fuck, I sat on that bait tank a lot of days sitting on that bait tank for nothing,
And those
dude. It
boats
was
full, because that's just how it was back then.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, it's like, when it dries up a little bit like that, it's, people lose interest, and kind of like what you're saying with the limit stuff. Like, no one's gonna go if you're not really catching anything. But definitely, like offshore stuff definitely gets the most grace, I feel, um, simply because it's so driven on water, like a couple more variables. Whereas, like, your calicos and rockfish, it's in the big picture, it's like your tomato garden. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
I've heard you say it before about some rockfish, but I don't pick all your tomatoes, because I mean, that's their home. Like, and if it's semi finite, especially like lobsters, same kind of deal. Like, it's semi finite, so that's a tricky one to balance. The local, I won't say the non pelagic fish that don't migrate in and do that stuff. That's a tricky one for like bass and lobster and stuff like that, to be able to give someone a good experience, take some stuff home, delicious meal with their family, yet can keep the populations coming back, year after year, and being able to do that. I will say, as I just said, I give pelagic fish a lot more grace, but I will say bluefin, I feel like, is one of the backhanded kind of success stories when it came to like conservation, and like calico bass 10 drop down to 5, immediate thought is less meat, this kind of sucks. That was exactly the case when the blue bluefin was just like any other tuna, and then the limit got knocked down to, it got nothing, it was zero, it went to none, like overnight. We were fishing, it was decent, like 20-40 pounders, and it got to overnight just zero. We're like, oh shoot, what are we gonna do? Like, this biting, we're not allowed. And then like a couple days later, weeks, I couldn't, it's all blur. I was just a zombie on the deck at the time. And like, oh, limits 2 now. I'm like, what? 2 20-pounders? Like, this is ridiculous. And then they became 80 pounders, and then 100 pounders, and now it's like 60-80 pounders. And then like you can kite fish or knife jig at night and catch 130 to 200 some odd pounder, and it's like, okay, 2 fish is like good for my family. Like, now, you know what I mean? Like, that somehow worked out. Like, whatever measures got put in place for that, like, god dang, like, California definitely came up big on the beneficiary. It was the main beneficiary of all that. So hopefully whatever variables, at the whatever sort of quota scale or management or just regulation, whatever that happened, or whatever happened there, definitely paid dividends for Southern California. So, it's there. Just gotta take note, take observation of it, because the only time bluefin tuna fishing has been this good in Southern California has been, I don't even know the years. I know you reference it quite a bit, just like the Catalina paper kite kind of days, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it was like early 1900s was the last time they had this size fish
Yeah.
in
So
any
it's
vol
really, what was that?
in any volume anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Just kind of hard. I mean, going back and like trying to trace down like like record, people keeping records of water temperature or like commercial harvest, or like just all these different variables, because it's never, It's not just water was warm, guys. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's warm water." I'm like, "Okay, it's not just the Wawa. It's not just the Wawa. Wawa's a big factor, but it's not always the only game in town because somehow they disappeared for all those years, and there was definitely an impact with from commercial fishing, like those days you were mentioning when you see like one albacore a week, like so many of those trips we would just be driving around and there'd be super seiners everywhere. Not everywhere. I mean, like see like 2 to 6 in a day just amongst making sets, and no one has any fish on the sport boats. And you're like, well, there's fish here because they just made a set, and you know, usually seiners won't put their nets in the water unless there's fish there, just because there's so much wear and tear. Like they literally, the business is so broken down in commercial fishing. They like how they kind of know how much wear and tear cost it takes to set out the net on average and bring it back on between like parting cables and mesh breaking and whatever. So when they're making a set, you knew there was fish around, but they just definitely didn't bite. And kind of right around that, what you're talking about, 2014, they stopped seeing those seiners and the fish started biting.
Yeah.
And if you guys think
But
bluefin are finicky now, they no way. Nothing like back then. It's freaking wild.
yeah, it's
Um,
pretty crazy to not see any. I mean, I remember going out on our private boats in July, and there'd be seiners making sets, and now you don't see them at all.
yeah. I
So
mean,
those,
sometimes I think a couple go out of Pedro but really not the super big ones, and not a whole, yeah, just not nearly like it used to be for sure. Not nearly like it used to be for sure.
no, but yeah, they get, most of the time they've been finishing up their quota down there in Mexico by mid-February. So by the time they get up to us, they've had months of unobstructed life, and
Just
so they're much more forgiving when we pile on top of them.
yeah, just like caged lions. By the time they get up here, like, we want to eat your bait, we want to eat your flying fish, take us home. And that's the wild part, is like we catch so much. When I say so much, I mean pounds, of bluefin, but it's really not a dent in the biomass. Like if you crush it on a skiff, like I don't know what's crushing it on a big fish day, 4, 6, right?
Yeah, crushing is limits, but that's
Well, I mean, like when they're excuse me on the like. Oh, sorry. If there's limits of 200-pound tuna on the boat, which I know is possible, but that's okay. So six 200-pound tuna. You got 1,200 pounds of meat. That's that school is 100 tons.
right.
That's what I mean. That's doing the absolute best, which might be a little bit much for most freezers to hold that sort of situation, but that's still not a dent. Whereas, like back in the day, I mean, not back in the day, but just you catch more, you kill more fish at a lighter weight. Definitely a little bit more of an impact, but yeah, right now it's just wild. You just go home with a cannery haul of meat, and if you just catch a limit, 2 fish and 280-pounders, 160 pounds of fish, you catch a 200-pound. You know what I mean? It's just the, so much more meat nowadays, and I, I, I just gotta feel that the biomass doesn't really feel it as much as it used to. Just even with a pile of boats on them, they might not bite as well, but like as far as like tonnage of number of fish, I don't think we really do a dent in it for real. Like,
I don't think so either, and I think when there are schools of the smaller, younger fish around, the 20, 30 pounders, if there's bigger fish around, most people are leaving those ones alone anyway. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? So, whereas in years past, if there was 20-pound bluefin around, we were catching every single one of them that we could. So, uh,
yeah,
yeah. So I definitely think that with, like you said, with the regulations of them dropping the limit to two, everyone was all freaked out. But with the size and the quality of the fish that we've had at our disposal the last 5 or 6 years, I don't think anybody's complaining that they only get to take two home, or two per day or whatever it is. And on my boat anyway, if I have 3 or 4 people and everyone's caught a 100+ pounder, we usually have a conversation like, you know, we can keep going, but do you guys need more fish? Can you eat enough of this fish to make it worthwhile, or is it end up going to get wasted? And I think a lot of people, if it was just 20 pounders, would just be taking every single one that they could. But if you got a 150 pounder on the boat already, like, you're going to pay to get it processed just to hand it out to the neighbors. Like, I think most people are happy just calling it good with whatever they take home from that fish, 70 or 80 pounds of fillet.
Oh, for sure. And I have a similar discussion nowadays. A lot, especially because like I don't know, there's still a fish count mindset around, but like when it's like if you say limits and then you say like everyone caught a 130 pounder, 200, 130 to 180, like you know, it's just more quality than quantity. So there is a lot more of that discussion. I in a lot of the trips I do now too. Like I don't mean to plan for like I'm not trying to jinx it or anything, but like guys, let's get our just know what you want to walk home with reasonably, and we can keep catching, but like let's cut them off because rather have if there's proper room for one fish of that grade per person, 70, 80 pounds of beautiful size fillets is usually more than enough for people. And even the people that like can really take a lot, because I have a couple clients and they got a routine where it's like, yep, got these big fillets for sushi party, poke, just like get a big grip of people together and really take care of them. And then the next day it's like a canning party. Like they just have a good, 20 people and a bunch of things and they like can it. And so it's like it gets used and they know how to do it. But even still, it's 80 pounds of pure fillet is, yeah, it's a lot. I mean, shoot, I don't
But
even know what my chest freezer like holds like volume wise, but it's like that fills up fast with a couple of big tuna. Like I remember when I was going on a couple 15-day trips back in the day, and I'm like, oh God, like I'm overstocked.com. I have too many here, but yeah, pretty
yeah, I think
wild.
that mindset is good. When the fish first showed up at that size, I think everyone was just like blown away and bloodthirsty and would catch every single one that they could. But now that it's kind of proved that it's not a flash in the pan deal, and it you know I don't know how long it's going to be here, but it's been 7 or 8 years now of that quality fish. So I think most people kind of, especially if they want to make more than one trip a year, they're going out 3 or 4 times, like they're happy to release a few fish or watch someone else catch one. We don't need to plug the boat every single trip, even if
Yeah.
that's possible.
I mean, it doesn't take many fish to plug your freezer, that's for sure. But yeah, it's like it's the perfect size fish to like make it worthwhile for like as far as like a meat consumption stance, it's like it's a good fight, great experience, and you go home with some good meat, book another trip a couple months later, see how you do. I don't know. I guess we can move on past bluefin, even though we can go on and on and on about that. What's so one of the unique things that you've done in your charter business, you know, is not there is seasons, but it's like kind of a year. It's just like 5 seasons. I don't know how many seasons glued together to make like a year-round fishery, more or less. That there's always like an option. There's always like an opportunity in in your program to catch a like I don't know. Run us through what a year looks like for Wes's boat.
Yeah, so typically, the year would if we're talking about a calendar year, it was January. You've got 3 months left of lobster season
Mm-hmm.
at the start of the year, and lobster season or lobster fishing is a great option if you just want to get out. Lobster tastes good. It's pretty low key as far as the fishing aspect goes. But there's also, in the winters over at the island in the last few years, we've had really good halibut fishing, and there's always a chance at a sea bass. So definitely be poking around, looking for some of that before we do our lobster. Um, and then, lobster usually ends like third week in March. And that's when we start really digging in our heels and looking for some sea bass, and try to be kind of the first ones to find them, first ones to get a good score over there. And our sea bass season typically runs through June. We could probably stretch it out even farther into July, but the last few years the offshore fishing is kind of taken everyone's attention by that time. But yeah, that's a good solid 3 months of you know fishing hard for those things every day, whether it be on the coast or at an island. And then yeah, once offshore season kicks off, hopefully that bluefin's made its way up out front of Orange County there. The last few years it has, and so we have nice, as far as offshore fishing goes, nice short runs out to the tuna grounds, and typically fish those through September, depending on the year. Last year September wasn't all that hot, but in years past, September even into October has been some of the best fishing that we've seen, especially for that bigger fish. Um, and then, you know, October is kind of a weird month because typically there's offshore fish to catch still. There's island fish to catch. Lobster season is open, and there's also broadbill swordfish to catch that in October. Starting kind of, I think the earliest we've caught ones in September, and that. But October, November, December seems to be the best months for the broadbill, and so that'll take us through the end of the year, and there's January 1st again, starts right back over with lobster.
Yeah, obviously there's potential times of year where the weather's a little variable or it's a little less desirable for the. I almost think it's funny, like you just listed off so many great options for 12 months, and what I've came to find is it's funny, human nature isn't really built. This goes back to the percentage of people who actually like care about fishing or whatever, but like, there's certain times where it's just like, I won't say awkward to go fishing for like normal people, but like, when they're thinking February, they're not like, let's go fish. You know what I mean? Like it's like school time for families and like just getting off Christmas, like, New Year's is or whatever, taxes are start. It's just kind of weird. And then even if the fishing is way better in like May, that's still just like July is still the month to just the peak time. So the cool part about your program is it just say when you want to go, and there's something for
Yeah,
sure. Like I
no,
said,
out
just
too,
do
because
it.
like the kids are in, you got family in town for the holidays or something, and you want to get out. There's always an option.
Right, especially in that ladder from like I said, when I never realized it until I started working on a long range boat of just the demand, like especially in like you said, 2004 when it was like the heavy pelagics, like so many like yellowfin, like 2 miles it seemed. Like before we could spool up like 6 rental rods from the bait barge, we were getting jig strikes on yellowfin. That's how close they were. That was happening, and then the next week there was like half the like overnight boats were tied up. And I'm like, what is going on? It is still biting nails, and it's just you know September. It's like school time. It's just a different kind of like mindset going into it. But the fall into the early winter, man, God, it's like my favorite time of year now. It's like it's the adult summer vacation. There's just the right fish, the cool fish to catch. A little tuna might be a little bigger, some island fish, a little lobster fishing, swordfish are around. And then to make things complicated, that's when hunting seasons always happen to really make everything happen all at once. But yeah, it's a great time of year for sure.
The
So
fall, the fall is definitely nice, especially for guys like us who are on the water so much. When the crowds go away, it just it makes it that much more enjoyable. For as
yeah,
a boat operator, you can kind of get your boat in wherever you want, and you find some fish. Typically, it's just you out there, you and a bud or something like that, and it's goes a little more unmolested than it would be in August or something like that on a weekend when there's, I don't, gosh, 500 boats out.
I mean, yeah, just
All
definitely out. Yeah, I was gonna say pick a spot. Oh, offshore, hundreds. Catalina, thousands. I don't know. You know what I mean? Just depends on where you go. It's just exponentially made exponentially insane at times. But the messed up part about some of those years is everyone was catching. I'm like, oh my god, there's all these boats and everyone is getting some. This is a true year for the books for sure. I remember one time we went to Farnsworth Bank and dude, it had so many people on. There was good yellows there, and I'm like, we caught a couple, and I'm like, yeah, all right, like I just needed a break. I just went to like, oh, cool kelp. And I threw the anchor over, and I was like straightening up, and like we caught more yellows. I'm like, God, just can't miss. Yeah. It's Baja style, like you're saying, Baja style yellowtail fishing. I'm like, this is insane. I just dropped my anchor, watched the sand like under it. I'm like, okay, cool. I got a minute to like compose the boat, and there's more yellowtail, but
Yeah.
pretty good. But anyway, that's a good. I believe this is probably a good little stopping point. We definitely got what Wes Pierson's about. Got a little background, specialties, got your outlook on some things. Man, hour goes by quick talking with you. That's why it's so nice. But we'll definitely have to make this a regular thing, especially just with whatever's happening in the world, in the fishing world, what's going on. Because with your style, you always have the finger on the pulse and always got some cool experiences to share. So, yeah. Thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for making time. Tough tracking you down.
We'll have to do a little mid-season or end of season recap going into hiking season there.
Yeah, it's going from the water to the sagebrush in the boots. Thank you all for joining us for this episode. If you guys have any questions or guest suggestions for the next one, please comment below or on the other platforms we have linked, be it Instagram or any streaming platform you're listening to this on. We'd love to keep building off of every conversation if someone has a relevant knowledge to bring to the table. So we would gladly appreciate any guest suggestions or comments. Please like, follow, subscribe to hear more. Appreciate you guys giving us a listen, and until next time, let's keep it wild. Thanks, guys.